And from the back here, this is where it starts to get bad. So both rear chassis legs covered in rust, top and bottom. You'll see here, all very, in fact the chassis has gone through there pretty much. Okay, just a light surface rust on some of the components here. Actually quite good, the chassis is at the back there. Still the original brown colour there, that's where the rear seat box was sitting. Now if we start to go down here, this is where it gets bad. You can see the seam there at the bottom of the chassis there. It's gone very rusty. And then we'll start to look through here. It really is starting to rust through. Let's go through here. You'll see again there along the seam, very rusty. Gone through there, as you can see. It's pretty much gone through the chassis there. And at the front as well, the seam's totally rusted open at the front. It really is. So, given how unknown the chassis is, I think we need to renew that chassis. And just so happen to have a new chassis here. Nice, shiny Ken Hanna chassis there. Which should do perfectly, thank you very much. So this is the rear suspension unit removed. As you can see, cleaning that back plate up with the wire brush did a really good job. It's nearly finished. You can see the metal there looks almost back to the original paint. Bolts and heads look perfect, looks really good. Compare that with this brake hub here that hasn't been cleaned up. You'll see it looks really bad, so hopefully we can all clean up quite nicely. So we'll keep cleaning this up. As you can see, we cut the bolts off there with the angle grinder. Absolutely no way we could get those off with by hand, absolutely impossible. So they were cut off, and now we'll continue to clean up the back axle and cut the front axle off as well. Working on the right hand side suspension cylinder. As you can see, we've taken loosened one of the nuts on the front sleeve here, and then a nut on the left hand side that's in the center, that's been wound out to push the sleeve out. So that's now come off the thread. So now we need to pull on this nut here to draw the sleeve totally out of the chassis, and you see the slot there. That slot will allow us to pull the suspension tie rod through and remove the whole suspension cylinder. As you can see, this end doesn't have that slot, so we have to put it all the way through this end and take the pull suspension tie bar through this part of the chassis. So there we are, a bit of drifting with a piece of wood, and the sleeve is now loose, so we'll take that out and see where we get to. Right, so we've now loosened the rear sleeve, so let's take out the rear sleeve and see if we can get the suspension can off the chassis. So here are today's parts. We've taken one of the suspension cans off. Looks like both the threaded tubes are okay, but we will need 4 new nuts and the new gaiters too. So next thing to do is to get the other suspension cylinder off, clean them up, repaint them, and then we can refit to the new chassis. So here we are with the remains of the chassis. Literally everything that is useful has now been stripped off this chassis, and later on the scrapman will be coming to pick it up. So there we are. That's the chassis I took off the 2CV. Having a closer look, you can see how bad it is. Plenty of holes there, top skin as well. There you go, you can see where I cut through the bolts to get the suspension front axle off there. There we go, the bump stop there won't come off. Going back, you can see the old brake pipe on, won't be reusing that. It's pretty clearly been used several times by looking at the shape of it. And that's where I cut the rear axle off as well. You can see plenty of repairs on the chassis too. So to be honest with you, I'll be quite glad to see this one go. So there we go. That's the old chassis for you.